The first thing you'll notice about Osiris is that the timer likes to add on about 2 seconds at the beginning. You'll want to restart to reset the timer, as it's not consistent enough to just subtract at the end. As soon as you gain movement control, thrust back and slightly to the left to pick up the empty energy sword. This gives you the speed bonus even though it is empty. You can watch when I use the thruster for a general idea of timing throughout the level, but it's no big deal if you miss one or change it up a little. If you want to see optimized thruster cycles, I recommend watching Renegade's IL World Records, and this will be true throughout the guide. You want to grab these splinters and suppressor for the 4 soldiers guarding the door in the future. The suppressors target the weak spots of the Prometheans, which destroys their helmet faster, and on easy, you often kill a soldier with a second of suppressor fire followed by a melee. The first turret launch has a couple of ways you can do it. I'll try it a few times the way I do it so you can get a sense for the margin of error, but mostly you'll have to get the hang of this yourself. Try to jump just before this bush at this angle, and stop holding forward as soon as your feet leave the ground. You can micro adjust your position in the air too, but most of the effort is in the jump.
Prometheus, all sides.
While in the air, you want to enter the cliff at about this area for the best place to land on top of the building without overshooting. I say enter instead of aim because you'll have to adjust your aim for the type of launch you get. You also have to get used to your ground pound not going exactly where you aim it on these far launches. It tends to drop you more vertically after a while. Anyway, if you undershoot, you will still usually be able to land safely, but it will take a few seconds longer to get to the button. If I get a really shallow launch, I try to aim here, but most of the time, if you get a shallow launch, you just try to aim as high as the game will let you. And if I get a higher launch, like I often do, I try to aim for this snowy patch right here. And when I'm that high, I have to aim a bit steeper, or else I'll miss the building entirely.
The middle, that'll be rough. Might want to consider flanking them.
Move smart. Fire with a purpose.
Here I'm trying to show another perspective on the building's location. I'm going to show you a few more launch attempts so you can see some variety. This one is another high and fast one, and they tend to be easier to land on the roof of the building. This is a really shallow launch, but still salvageable. You just need to aim as high as you can, and you'll land lower on the building, but it's still easy to get to the button. On this launch I thrusted back because I saw I wasn't landing where I wanted to, and somehow I still got a launch. But as you can see, I'm a little bit farther away from the cliff, so even though normally I would aim more directly downward at this height, I still just aimed as far horizontally as I could go. If you land on the ceiling, run to the middle back of the structure and either drop or thrust in, or if you want to be safer, ground pound in. As long as you land on the door or further in, you can make it. If you jump too far out and wait too long before using your ground pound, you're probably not going to make it. If you're taking the lower path, run while hugging the left wall and jump about here. Try to stand as close to the button before activating it so that you don't lose time waiting for the load. Next, position yourself just past the gray walls and wait for the loading text. As soon as you see it, jump clamber on this dark box, and then jump over the door and slightly to the right. When you land, you can get a brief sprint going and then jump as the level loads. In that clip, the level loaded before I even hit the ground. If you were streaming off the Xbox instead of a computer, it may look like this a bit longer, although it could be loading slowly for other reasons too. When you wait too long to get out, you can get stuck outside the map, although I think I was pretty unlucky in this case. At some point during this running sequence, make sure you switch to your splinter grenades. You just have to kill the 4 soldiers that spawn here to progress to the next area. Now, I throw some terrible nades here and somehow get rewarded for it. But anyways, once they're all dead, look around on the ground for splinter grenades. If you find 0, well, you may as well reset. It's not that you can't beat the next fight without one, but you're going to lose a lot of time to spawn killing. Here I do a lot better job at throwing nades, and I make sure to stand back while killing the rest of them so that they don't teleport behind me and confuse me.
Must have dealt a blow to Imdama's authority when the Prometheans turned on him. Gained a lot of followers, styling himself as a forerunner prophet.
At the next door, I try to highlight all the weapons so that maybe Vale will drop her useless plasma pistol. Keep in mind that the door should open by the time Buck's finished saying,
Well, I could stand to break a little faster if you ask me.
We're close to Halsey's position.
Now, there's a few places you can stand in this room to delay the door opening, which you don't want, And I don't know all of them, but I'll show all the ones I do know. If you do realize that the door isn't opening at the end of Buck's line, just move around a little and it should open eventually.
Nice.
Hostiles charging.
Well, I could stand to break a little faster if you ask me.
We're close to Halsey's position.
So far, I haven't had a delayed door as long as I'm squished in the corner of this doorway.
Well, I could stand to break a little faster if you ask me.
To avoid losing a good pace, you want to make sure you kill the damaged knights before they are done with their scripted animations and make things hard for you, or you waste a splinter. So, after grabbing the scatter shot, thrust down so you can catch this crawler before he escapes, and then take out the knight on the left closest to you after a brief pause. If you mess up, ignore him and focus on taking out the next damaged knight before he turns around. Shoot his remaining armor off while he's invincible so that you can one-shot him between him turning vulnerable and turning around to face you. Then jump over the turret and splinter the now middle knight. Your grenade might not kill him if he's still jumping or moving, so be prepared to finish him off with the scatter shot. Then turn to the left and scatter shot the crawler, which always goes here, on the way to splintering the last knight. As you see, this one jumped through most of the damage. Now luckily I had a plasma grenade on me, but if I didn't, I'd recommend just scatter shotting his weak points, and then moving around to the back to finish him off. After killing the final knight, look at your radar to see the position of most of the grunts and crawlers. Most of the time they cluster in the middle of the room and you can spam frag grenades, or if you'd like, just scatter shot or light rifle enemies as you find them. This time didn't go so well since the enemies were spread out, which is a drawback of not shooting grunts at the beginning, like in the world record.
Concentrate fire on the broken armor.
Here's a fight with only one splinter grenade at the beginning. In this situation, try to keep an eye out on the positions of the elites in the middle. You want to go over the ground where they died so you can find potential plasma grenade drops, which work just as well as a splinter grenade. Here the enemies are a bit nicer and stay bunched up. After you kill all enemies and head to the door, keep an eye on the timer. Fairly often, the after battle report won't show up because of some failure to retrieve data, which can happen even if your internet connection is fine and you can still play multiplayer. If the after battle report does show up and the timer seems off, you can retime the mission manually, and instructions on how to do that are in the forum section of HaloRuns.com.